Final Fantasy is one of the most influential and beloved franchises in gaming history. With a long and rich legacy, the series has delivered countless memorable experiences, each with its own unique flavor. Vast worlds, emotional stories, and iconic soundtracks have defined generations. But not every title reached the same level of greatness. Today we're ranking the mainline Final Fantasy games, excluding the MMORPGs and remakes, from least to most impactful. Let's find out what makes each of these games shine, or fail miserably within this legendary saga. 14. Final Fantasy XIII. At the bottom of our list is Final Fantasy XIII, a game that arrived with grand promises but stumbled hard in execution. It was supposed to be the game that reignited my passion for gaming. It didn't. The paradigm shift system tries to innovate, but in reality it quickly becomes repetitive. The strategy? Basically, swap roles and mash the attack button until the enemy drops. It's like playing rock, paper, scissors, just without the fun part. Visually, the game is a spectacle, but not always in a good way. At times, the aesthetics feel like pure visual diarrhea of overdesign, with explosions of colors and effects that confuse more than impress. It's as if the design is screaming, "Look how pretty I am," but forgets to be functional. The soundtrack? Sure, it has its moments, but it's far from delivering the memorable melodies that define the best entries in the series. A lot of the music sounds like something you'd hear in a dentist's waiting room. Pleasant, but completely forgettable. And the game's biggest sin? The suffocating linearity. You literally walk through endless corridors for hours with no real freedom to explore. It's like watching a movie where you occasionally need to press buttons. The story? Confusing, packed with made-up terms that sound like they came from a random word generator. Falsi, Lisi, Siet, seriously? And the characters? Not exactly charismatic, with story arcs that fail to excite. Not even Lightning, who was marketed as the new Cloud, can carry the narrative. Final Fantasy XIII isn't just disappointing, it's the embodiment of broken expectations. For me, it was the most frustrating game in the entire series. And that's saying something, considering Final Fantasy has had its share of missteps. 13. Final Fantasy II. In 13th place, we have Final Fantasy II, a game that can't be accused of lacking ambition. Square tried to innovate with a progression system based on character actions, meaning you get stronger by taking damage, casting spells, or attacking. Sounds interesting? In theory, yes. In practice, most people didn't like it. I found interesting and didn't came close to ruin my play. In fact, I didn't have to self-harm to progress, like I've been told every time I heard from this game. But the game had worse sins. The narrative took a step forward compared to the first game, aiming for something more serious and dramatic. But aiming is the key word here. The story is still generic, with shallow characters and dialogues that don't engage. It feels like a rough draft of the grand narratives the series would later deliver. It's not the game fault, though. It is a limitation of that era. But what about those sins? Well, do you like random encounters? Even if you do, like me, brace yourself, because Final Fantasy II takes it to another level. Every 2 steps, you're thrown into a battle. And when you're not fighting, you're getting lost in dungeons full of doors that lead absolutely nowhere. That's right, empty rooms just to mess with you. Whose idea was that? In the end, Final Fantasy II was ambitious and a clear evolution was the first installment, but its execution makes it one of the least enjoyable titles in the series. It's like that experimental recipe that sounded great on paper, but came out burnt and inedible. With little corrections, this game could be playable, though. 12. Final Fantasy I. Final Fantasy I is the game that started it all. Without it, the franchise wouldn't even exist. But let's be honest, as much respect as it deserves, playing this today is almost a test of patience. Back then, it was revolutionary. The class system, the open world, for its time, the turn-based battles, the graphics, all of that laid the foundation for what would come next. But being a pioneer comes with a price of maybe aging badly. And here that price is insane grinding, and a story that can be summed up in one sentence. Defeat the villain and save the world. Deep, right? The characters? They're literally personality-free avatars. Generic warriors ready to play the hero's role, without any development or motivation. Don't expect memorable dialogue or shocking plot twists. The most exciting thing you'll see is the screen flashing when a monster attacks. And the grind? Oh boy, the grind. Get ready to fight the same group of goblins 500 times just to earn enough gold to buy a decent sword. That's if you don't get lost in mazes with layouts so confusing they look like they were drawn on a bar napkin. Despite all this, it's not a bad game, and it's impossible to deny the importance of Final Fantasy I. It paved the way for everything the series would become. But today it works better as a historical relic in a game you'd like to play 1 or 2 times only. Total respect, but not so much patience. 11. Final Fantasy III. Final Fantasy III is where the franchise starts to show clear signs of evolution. The job system was the big innovation here, adding a layer of customization that gave players much more freedom. Finally, you could shape your party however and whenever you wanted. Mage, warrior, thief, all in the same lineup. But of course, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Despite this novelty, the system can get tiring. You're constantly forced to swap jobs to adapt to specific challenges. On paper, it sounds strategic, but in practice, it turns into a revolving door of classes that feels more like a costume party clearance sale. And the story? Simple. Again, following the standards of the time. Once again, we've got Warriors of Light out to save the world. No major twists, no memorable characters. In fact, the characters have as much depth as a wet cardboard box. And the difficulty? It swings like a roller coaster. 1 minute you're cruising along, the next you're getting smacked down without warning. It's like the game is whispering, relax, it's easy. And then, bam, a boss wipes you out in 2 turns. Although lacking of modern games polishing, Final Fantasy III has its merits. It's a crucial step forward in the series' evolution, and despite its missteps, it delivers a more robust experience than its predecessors, especially for playing with the jobs. Just don't expect deep storytelling or unforgettable characters, because honestly, you won't find them here. Although I enjoy the 3 first games, or almost enjoyed 2, they're just aged and there's nothing I can do about it. 10. Final Fantasy V. Coming in at 10th place, we have Final Fantasy V, which takes the job system from FFVII and cranks it up to 11. Here, class customization is insane and with more freedom. Want a sword-wielding mage or a monk who casts magic? Go for it. The strategic freedom is massive, making battles much more engaging. But let's be honest, it's far from perfect. The story in Final Fantasy V, it's not the best, which is a downgrade from 4. A villain trying to destroy the crystals? Wow, how original. And the characters? Sure, they're a bit more charismatic than in previous games, but they still lack emotional weight. Bartz has his charm, but let's face it, no one here is going to be remembered like Cloud or Squall. Despite the refined gameplay, it lacks that narrative punch. The experience feels limited when the story doesn't pull you in. It's like that friend who's a genius at strategy games, but couldn't tell an interesting story to save their life. And let's be fair, the older games in the franchise often land in these lower spots for a clear reason. More limited mechanics, simpler stories, and that endless grind to pad out gameplay. Plus, most of us didn't play these games when they first came out, myself included. So we don't have that emotional bonding that many fans do with the more iconic titles. But it's important to say, aside from Final Fantasy II and 13, every game from here on out is, at the very least, good. And starting with the next spot, we're talking about games that are categorically excellent. So buckle up, because now it's about to get serious. 9. Final Fantasy XVI. In 9th place, we have Final Fantasy XVI, the game that doubled down on action combat and dove headfirst into a darker, more mature narrative. If the goal was to bring brutality and seriousness to the franchise, mission accomplished. Visually, Final Fantasy XVI is a spectacle. Every environment, every battle, every Icon summon is a true work of art. The Icon battles are insane, almost like watching a fantasy blockbuster movie. The soundtrack matches the weight of the story, delivering epic and emotional moments. And the story? Deep and heavy. It explores themes like power, revenge, loss, and destiny in a mature way, delivering a dense narrative full of twists. Clive is a solid protagonist with clear motivations and a convincing personal journey. This game isn't afraid to be dark, violent, and political, but not everything hits the mark. The essence of Final Fantasy as a classic RPG got lost along the way. Exploration is limited, almost non-existent compared to other entries in the series. The world might look open, but it's very guided and very linear, and the overemphasis on action combat makes it feel less like Final Fantasy and more like a big-budget hack and slash. For longtime fans, that sense of free exploration and strategic choice might feel missing. The game is beautiful, well-written and fun, but in the end, it doesn't evoke the same emotional response as other titles. It feels like a grand spectacle that, despite impressing, doesn't create lasting emotional bonds. Still, Final Fantasy XVI is bold. It's an ambitious entry that tries to redefine the franchise. And even though it doesn't get everything right, it's impossible to ignore its quality and ambition. As a game, it's good. As a Final Fantasy, especially in JRPG, not so much. 8. Final Fantasy XII. At 8th place, we have Final Fantasy XII, the game that decided to blend RPG with strategy and a dash of MMO. The Gambit system was a bold innovation, letting you program your characters to act on their own in battle. Sounds smart, right? And it is. But it also means you can basically sit back and watch the game play itself while you sip on a coffee. The world of Ivalice is, without a doubt, one of the richest and most detailed in the series. Expansive environments, lively cities, giant monsters roaming freely. It's a true playground for exploration lovers. And honestly, after so much linearity in previous games, this freedom was a breath of fresh air. But not everything works. The story tries to be political and complex, full of intrigue and betrayal, but it lacks emotional impact. It feels like a generic Star Wars knockoff with empires and rebellions, just without the lightsabers. And speaking of the characters, Vaughn and Penelo feel like they were shoved in there at the last minute. Seriously, it's obvious they don't really belong in the story. Balthier, though, now that's charisma. The rest, it's like butterless bread, dry and forgettable. The pacing doesn't help either. The first few hours are painfully slow, and the game only starts to pick up much later. It's like binge-watching a series that only gets good by the 3rd season. Despite its missteps, Final Fantasy XII has its merits. If you enjoy a more methodical and strategic gameplay experience, you'll probably appreciate what this game offers. Just don't expect to walk away emotionally shaken or fully immersed in the story. 7. Final Fantasy XV. Final Fantasy XV was Square Enix's big gamble to modernize the franchise. And well, they threw everything at it. Open-world exploration, real-time combat, jaw-dropping graphics, and of course, a quartet of protagonists who look like a boy band on tour. The world of EOS is vast and visually stunning. Endless highways, forests, deserts, towering monsters. Everything screams grandeur. And the bond between Noctis, Prompto, Ignis, and Gladio is without a doubt the heart of the game. The road trip conversations, the jokes at camp, that genuine bromance, it all adds an emotional depth the series really needed. The exploration becomes boring really fast though, but then comes the tricky part, the story, or rather the lack of one, because Final Fantasy XV feels like a puzzle with missing pieces. Key plot elements were scattered across DLCs, movies, and anime. So if you actually want to understand the full story, you need to leave the game and binge extra content. Convenient, right? And the combat? Fun at first, but after a while it becomes an endless loop of dodging, attacking, and using Warp Strike. Some mechanics show promise, but never fully deliver. The main campaign also suffers from weird pacing, an expansive open world in the first half, and a non-stop linear sprint to the finish. In short, it's a flavorless game. Not bad, but not captivating either. Like that fancy dish at a restaurant that looks amazing, but tastes bland. Still, Final Fantasy XV was important for pushing the series in a new direction. Did it fully succeed? Not really, but at least they tried. 6. Final Fantasy IV. In 6th place is Final Fantasy IV, a true turning point for the franchise. This is where the series decided to take storytelling to the next level, delivering a rich narrative full of themes like redemption, sacrifice, and the eternal battle between good and evil. The fifth impactful plot of the franchise. Cecil is a complex protagonist, starting as a dark knight and embarking on a journey of self-discovery to become a paladin. Cain, with his constant inner turmoil, practically embodies involuntary betrayal. And Rydia, a perfect example of emotional growth and character evolution. Each character has their own arc, keeping players fully engaged from start to finish. On top of that, the active time battle (ATB) system made its debut here, revolutionizing turn-based combat and adding a layer of dynamism the series desperately needed. Every battle made you feel the weight of your decisions in real time. But it's not all perfect. Difficulty spikes appear out of nowhere, forcing players into grinding that can slow the narrative's momentum. That smooth story flow grinds to a halt when you're stuck fighting the same monsters for hours just to move forward. Even so, Final Fantasy IV is an absolute classic. It not only solidified many of the elements that became standard for the franchise, but also proved how a powerful story can transform a game. Decades later, Cecil and his crew still hold a special place in fans' hearts, and rightfully so. 5. Final Fantasy VIII. Landing at 5th place, we have Final Fantasy VIII, one of the most polarizing games in the franchise. You either love it or hate it, and honestly, both sides make sense. The Junction system was one of the game's big innovations, allowing for deep character customization. But there's a problem. You either don't understand it yet and struggle through the whole game, or you figure out how to break it early and become practically invincible. And let's be honest, it's not that difficult to understand as many people say. The draw system? Oh, that tedious ritual of draining magic from enemies for hours. But don't worry, once you discover refining cards and items into magic, you realize you wasted your time. Speaking of enemies, the game actively discourages you from fighting. The level scaling mechanic makes random battles more of a punishment than a reward. Add that to the fact that almost everything you could earn beating monsters, you could do refining cards or playing the stupid Chocobo game, and you will never want to battle again. Seriously, most of the bestiary I know from this game comes entirely from Triple Triad. The story starts with an interesting premise, but completely loses its way. The pacing goes off the rails in the final third. The frequent changing villains is also a problem with you not knowing who you really want to stop. The lore is actually pretty good. You need to hunt for random dialogue or dive into internet theories. It's like they forgot to tell you how good the story was. But hey, it's not all criticism. The soundtrack is absolutely spectacular. Tracks like Liberi Fatali still give me chills to this day. And those FMV cutscenes, jaw-dropping, especially for that era. The romance between Squall and Rinoa has its moments, even if Squall himself is basically a brick wall with hair. Despite everything, it's a fun game. Far from perfect, but it has this weird charm that made me replay it more times than I care to admit. It's not my favorite, but it's definitely the one I've played the most in the series. Go figure. I have so many thoughts on this game that I'll have to make an exclusive video to tell everything. 4. Final Fantasy X. In 4th place, we have Final Fantasy X, the game that propelled the franchise straight into the modern era. Fully 3D graphics, voice-acted characters, and a story that could make even the toughest player reflect on life. The narrative is one of the most emotional in the series, diving deep into themes like sacrifice, blind faith, and the weight of tradition. The relationship between Tidus and Yuna is the heart of the game. And even though Tidus has his questionable moments, forced chuckle included, it's impossible not to get invested in their journey. The sphere grid progression system was another brilliant idea. Flexible and intuitive, it allowed for unique character customization without being as confusing as the junction system from FFVIII. Every step forward on the grid felt like real progress, constantly motivating players to explore and battle. Now, yes, the game is linear, very linear, but unlike other titles, this linearity works in favor of the narrative. Every step is carefully designed to guide you through the story without unnecessary distractions. The visuals were revolutionary at the time, and the soundtrack? To Xanarkand is simply one of the most iconic tracks, not just in the series, but in gaming history. Those first few notes are enough to make anyone emotional. Of course, it's not perfect. Titus isn't the easiest protagonist to relate to, and that awkward laugh became a meme. But Final Fantasy X carries such emotional weight that these flaws feel minor. It's the kind of game that, once it's over, leaves a void. And that, my friend, is the mark of a truly impactful experience. 3. Final Fantasy VI. Now, on the podium, we have Final Fantasy VI. And I have to admit, this game might have been a bit unfairly treated by me. When it was released, I only had access to the Japanese version. Don't ask me why. And I tried to push through, but without understanding anything, I never got past the first few hours. That created a barrier between me and the game. It wasn't until years later that I finally played the English version, and that's when I truly appreciated what Final Fantasy VI is, a masterpiece. The game features one of the most expansive and diverse casts in the entire series. Every character has their own arc, their own conflicts, and that creates a powerful emotional connection. Celes, Terra, Locke, Sabin, Edgar. The list goes on. Almost each one has their moment to shine. And then there's Kefka, the clown who became a god. Many consider him the greatest villain in the series, and for good reason. He's not just insane, he's effective. He won, he destroyed the world, became a god, and left the heroes scrambling in the ruins. That gives the story some serious weight. The lack of explanation for the nature of his powers kind of bothers me though. But let's be honest, Kefka is a formidable antagonist. The battle system with the Espers strikes the perfect balance of customization, and the soundtrack is simply masterful. Dancing Mad is a musical masterpiece that rivals any final boss theme in the franchise. Now, of course, it's not perfect. The second half of the game loses a bit of focus. Some characters fade into the background, and the excessive freedom can disrupt the story's pacing. But honestly, these are minor issues compared to the grandeur of everything Final Fantasy VI delivers. It's a game that could easily be at the very top of this list, and maybe if I had played it at the right time, it would be. 2. Final Fantasy IX. In second place, we have Final Fantasy IX, a true gift for old-school fans of the series. I played this one at launch, and I can confidently say it was love at first play. Final Fantasy IX is a love letter to the roots of the franchise, a return to medieval fantasy, but with all the gameplay and storytelling evolution the series had built up to that point. The story manages to be both nostalgic and innovative, blending humor, tragedy, and heroism masterfully. The cast is simply flawless. Zidane is charming without being forced, and Vivi, one of the deepest and most emotional characters in the series, grappling with themes of existence and mortality. Garnet, Steiner, Freya, Quina, each has a well-defined role, and they all contribute to a rich and engaging narrative. The ability system, based on learning skills through items, is intuitive and offers a unique variability to the game. No broken or confusing mechanics here. Everything flows naturally and feels rewarding. The world of Gaia is incredibly detailed. Every corner, every village feels alive. Exploring is a joy, and there's always something new to discover. And the soundtrack? Nobuo Uematsu was truly inspired. Tracks like Melodies of Life still move listeners to this day. Sure, the combat can feel a bit slow. The transition between menus and actions isn't the fastest, and the game's lighter tone might not appeal to those who prefer darker plots. But again, that's just minor issues. Perhaps the only downside to FF9's success was its release timing. It came out at the end of the PlayStation 1's life cycle, when everyone was already eyeing the PS2. So it got a bit overshadowed by the console transition, but for those who played it, it was unforgettable. Final Fantasy IX perfectly captures the magic that made the series so beloved, all while introducing enough new ideas to stand out on its own. For many, this is the pinnacle of what a Final Fantasy game can be. And honestly, I get it. It almost was for me too. 1. Final Fantasy VII. They say that everyone's favorite Final Fantasy is the first one they played. For me, the FFVII was Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. Yes, that simplified RPG many people look down on, but I genuinely like it. I wouldn't say where it will be in my ranking for you guys don't think I'm crazy, but my favorite, it's not my first, is actually 7. The year was 1997. I stumbled upon a list of the best PlayStation games, and there it was at the top, Final Fantasy VII, and I ran to get my copy of the game. For no one's surprise, the impact was immediate. The first act in Midgar is simply perfect. The blend of action, drama, suspense, romance, humor, and even horror creates an unforgettable introduction. The transition from that suffocating industrial city to the vast overworld is shocking. The plot twist at the end of this segment caught me off guard. More than the ending of The Sixth Sense. If that part alone were its own game, it would already be amazing, though the remake didn't quite capture that. The narrative is dense, rich in detail, with character arcs that evolve organically. The pacing is impeccable, knowing exactly when to speed up or slow down. Sure, there's a bit of a slump after Icicle Inn, but it doesn't diminish the grandeur of the experience. And Sephiroth, an iconic villain, his aura of power, his tragic past, that cold stare and his menacing presence, even without saying a word, make him one of the most memorable antagonists in gaming history. It's not just brute strength, it's psychological. The materia system, another brilliant design. Simple to understand, but with incredible depth. You can create insane combinations of abilities, making each playthrough unique. It's the kind of system that encourages experimentation without punishing the player. And Nobuo Uematsu's soundtrack? You can't talk about Final Fantasy VII without mentioning it. One Winged Angel, Aerith's theme, Genova. Every track is iconic, and hearing One Winged Angel during the final battle still gives me chills. But this game isn't remembered just for being good. Final Fantasy VII was a cultural phenomenon. It brought JRPGs into the global mainstream and solidified the PlayStation as the dominant console of its era. Its influence is everywhere. In Western RPGs, spiritual successors, remakes, spin-offs, movies. It's simply redefined the genre. Sure, it's not perfect. There are little pacing issues, and the polygonal graphics haven't aged well. But honestly, that's minor's flaw. The overall experience Final Fantasy VII offers is unmatched. It captivated millions and is still celebrated as one of the greatest video games of all time. For all these reasons, the story, the characters, the gameplay, the music, the cultural impact, Final Fantasy VII unquestionably deserves the top spot on our ranking. Summarizing the ranking, here's the Final Fantasy tier list. At the bottom, Final Fantasy XIII sits with its disappointing blandness, followed by Final Fantasy II and its frustrating dungeon design. Then we have Final Fantasy I, III, and V, solid but undeniably aged experiences. On the other end, Final Fantasy XVI, XII, and XV captures some of the best aspects of modern gaming, but lack that special something that defines a true Final Fantasy. 16 drifts too far from its RPG roots, 12 tells a forgettable story, and 15 feels disappointingly flat. Still, they're good games in their own right. Moving up, Final Fantasy IV, VIII, and X rank high, with only minor flaws holding them back. 4 still delivers a compelling story even today. 8, despite its lack of polish, remains a blast to play, and 10 offers a well-balanced mix of storytelling and enjoyable gameplay. At the very top, we reach the Olympus of Final Fantasy games. Final Fantasy VI delivers an outstanding narrative with a memorable cast and smooth, accessible gameplay. Final Fantasy IX refines everything great about the series up to that point, arguably making it the most enjoyable entry to play. And finally, at the pinnacle, Final Fantasy VII stands as a masterpiece, one that remains incredibly hard to surpass. And that wraps up our ranking of the mainline Final Fantasy games. Do you agree with the list? Completely disagree? After all, every fan has their favorite and their opinions. But one thing's undeniable: the monumental impact this franchise has had on the gaming world. Now I want to hear from you. What's your favorite Final Fantasy game? Is there one you think should be higher or lower on this list? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Maybe you could change my mind about something, and comment which game you want an exclusive review. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more gaming content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. If you've made it this far, first of all, thank you. Before you go, I just want to leave a quick note and make a small ask. This is a one-man show. I started 3 channels while balancing a full-time job and family life. Right now, I can't afford a proper editor or professional audio equipment, which is why you'll sometimes hear AI-generated voice and see modest editing. I know it's not perfect, but it's built on genuine passion. My love for all of these subjects and the drive to share opinions, analysis, and stories that don't always get the attention they deserve. If you'd like to support this project, you don't need to spend anything. Just subscribing, liking, commenting, or sharing the video already helps a ton. Every bit of support keeps this going and brings it closer to the quality I'm aiming for.